Hello everyone, in today's video I'm going to be building medium scale Africa in Minecraft. Africa has the most countries out of any continent with over 50 countries. These countries are generally more easy to build than Asian countries, but there's a lot more of them. So I'm going to be starting in Egypt and ending in Madagascar and the islands around Madagascar. And that's pretty much all I have to say for the intro, so go enjoy the time lapse. The first African country I built was Egypt. Egypt was a medium-sized country with a lot of straight line borders, so it's pretty easy to build, except the eagle, which took a little bit more time. Next I did Libya, which had a more complicated flag, but the borders were simpler and easier. It also had a few lakes. Tunisia was one of the easiest countries to build in Africa. It was just pretty small and had a relatively simple flag. I then started the biggest country in Africa, Algeria. The flag was relatively simple, but the border was pretty hard because of all the slanted lines. But other than that, it's pretty easy. I then did the last North African country, Morocco and the Western Sahara. These countries were about medium-sized. Morocco had a more complicated flag. I did have to make the Western Sahara flag from scratch though, because the ref didn't have it on there. So that's why the Western Sahara flag doesn't look that great, if you're wondering. Beginning West Africa, I did Mauritania. Mauritania was simple enough, it had a few straight line corners, and just a few lakes, and a pretty medium difficulty flag. Mali was like an easier version of Mauritania because it was around the same size, but also the flag was just 3 colors, so it was easier. Finishing out these 3 medium-sized countries is Niger. Niger was relatively easy. It's like a little bit easier Mauritania because instead of the crescent and the stars is a circle. I then did these West African coastal countries. There are 6 of them in this recording, making it one of the biggest batches of countries I did all at once. These countries were all relatively easy because of their small size. Next was Cape Verde, which was also very easy. Burkina Faso was simple enough to build, just 2 colors and a star. I then did the Ivory Coast and Ghana. The Ivory Coast had a 3-color flag, which was pretty easy. And then Ghana had basically the same thing, but rotated with different colors and a black star. I then did Togo and Benin, which because they were very skinny, that made them very easy to build. I then did Nigeria, which is one of the most populated countries on the continent. It was simple enough to build because the flag was simple and also the borders weren't that hard. Most African countries are very easy to build, so I'm going to be saying that a lot as you can see through the entire video. Beginning Central Africa was the country of Chad. Chad was basically just like a bigger Nigeria, but with more colors. I then did one of the biggest countries on the entire continent, Sudan. Sudan had a border which is kind of annoying to build, and then the triangle flag, which didn't take that long because it's relatively simple to make. I then did Cameroon, which is relatively simple because I already did a lot of the border when I made these surrounding countries that border it. I then did the Central African Republic. There's not much to say here, just a pretty simple country to build. I then did South Sudan, which is kind of like a harder version of regular Sudan because the flag was more complicated and it also had like a triangle thing like I'm building right now. I then did one of the hardest countries in Africa, Ethiopia. Ethiopia is one of the biggest countries in Africa, but also has one of the most complicated flags. And the flag has a star thing on it that was really hard to build. Next, I did some of the smaller countries around Ethiopia, Eritrea and Djibouti. These countries were pretty easy to build just because of their small size. Next was Somalia. Somalia is the last country in the Horn of Africa. It was a pretty easy build since the flag was just a blue background and a star. The borders also weren't that hard, they were pretty smooth. I then built Kenya. Kenya has one of the most complicated flags in Africa. It has a seal on it, so it was pretty hard to build. But it was not the worst thing I ever did, so I got it done pretty quickly. Next was Uganda. Uganda had one of the most unique flags on the entire continent, so it was a pretty fun country to build. Next I did Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, and the Republic of the Congo. These countries had relatively simple flags and were easier to build on average because they were small, so that means I was able to do them all in one recording. I then did Sao Tome and Principe really quickly because I forgot to do it in the last recording. And then I began building one of the hardest countries to do in Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This country was massive. And also it had this yellow stripe, which it took forever for me to figure out because I kept building it wrong. But other than that, the flag was one of the hardest ones I had to build yet in Africa. But I got it done and then it looked really good when it was finished. Finishing Central Africa was Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi. Rwanda and Burundi were very easy. Tanzania was bigger, so it took a little bit longer, but it wasn't too hard, and I finished it relatively quickly. I also finished Lake Victoria while I was doing Tanzania too. I started South Africa with Angola. Angola has one of the more interesting flags on the continent because it has this gear with a knife and a star. I was dumb and forgot the star in the last recording, so I made the star, and then I got to work building Zambia. Zambia was a pretty interesting country to build because the border was an interesting shape, and also the flag was interesting because of this, what it looked like. Also, I built Malawi too, which is a pretty simple country to build. I then did Mozambique. Mozambique was probably one of the most unique countries I built because I used dark prismarine for the flag, and that's the only time in the snap I've ever done that because the flag is a very weird color that doesn't have really a concrete or terracotta counterpart. Next was Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is the last country alphabetically, and it was a pretty simple build. Next was Namibia. Namibia was one of the biggest countries I built in South Africa. It has a pretty interesting shape with the panhandle, but other than that, the flag was pretty easy and the borders were pretty easy. Botswana is probably one of the easiest countries to build in South Africa. Not really much to say here. Pretty simple flag, pretty simple border. So yeah. South Africa, the main country in the southern part of Africa, was a pretty easy build, but it has some countries inside of them that I also had to build, like Eswatini and Lesotho. But other than that, the flag was also pretty simple. It had a lot of colors though. So yeah, that's all I have to say for South Africa. Finishing up Africa was Madagascar. Madagascar was the biggest island in Africa that I had to build. It's the only major island country in Africa too. After Madagascar was complete, I did some smaller island countries around Madagascar like Comoros, Seychelles, and Mauritius. And then after those were done, Africa was done. I would like to thank everyone for watching this video. This video was pretty repetitive, honestly. It's Africa, so there wasn't a lot to talk about. A lot of the countries are pretty similar, so sorry the video got boring. But anyways, next video will be Oceania, but I'm going to South Dakota, so it's going to be after I come back from South Dakota. So hopefully that video can come out in very early August. Anyways, that's all I have to say. Bye.